So it's time to discuss the Cork senior hurlers ahead of the upcoming 2022 National Hurling League and the 2022 All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. In Cork last year, what a year they had getting to the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship final. I mean, a huge achievement for Cork in many ways, considering they hadn't been to a final in quite a long time. They'd really been in the doldrums of hurling, really. And when you look at a county like Cork, one of the most successful teams in the history of the sport, they've really been out of it in the last couple of years. 17 years now without winning an All-Ireland come June. So that will be another long wait, really, that will continue if they don't go and win it this year. Last year, look, it didn't work out in that final. They were absolutely trashed by Limerick. I mean, it was an awful first half performance in many ways, but you can't discredit Limerick and the team that they have, and we do speak about that in due course throughout this podcast. I was delighted to speak with Matthew Hurley of the GAA Statsman once again, and we preview the Cork senior hurlers just like we previewed the footballers last week. And today we run through a number of topics, really, from who could come into the panel this year. Will we see any of the under-20 hurlers who were a part of All-Ireland success last year maybe come into the team? Can anyone close the gap on Limerick? What surprise teams could maybe be involved in the All-Ireland this year? And can Cork finally end this long famine in terms of winning the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship in 2022 or even beyond? So yeah, if you could leave a like and subscribe, let me know down in the comments down below what you thought of the podcast, and also what do you think will happen with the Cork senior hurlers this year? How do you think they will get on in both the league and the championship? If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, if you could give the podcast a rating, it helps the podcast grow a little bit more and helps it get noticed to more people, so I would really appreciate that as well. But yeah, look, listen, let's get straight into it here. The Cork Senior Hurling Championship preview for 2022. Let's go.
Well, nowadays you got to have that because people nowadays.
Before we get straight into the podcast, I just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Declan Kirby GAA Star. Declan Kirby GAA Star Championship Journey. It's a series of GAA team children's books written by primary school teacher and GAA coach Michael Egan. You can check it out in the link in the description down below, of course, as well. Follow the trials and tribulations of Declan Kirby and his team at Smithgreen Gaelic Football Club, recently formed but promising GAA team. The book is now available in Easons and all good bookshops, so check it out in the description down below, and let's get straight into it. Yeah, I suppose moving on then, we'll touch on the Cork hurlers ahead of 2022 as well. Like a big year for Cork hurling in many ways. Like after last year, like a huge achievement to get all the way to an All-Ireland final, and as we were mentioning at the very start of the podcast, like 17 years now without an All-Ireland for Cork and hurling, for what is the second most successful county in senior hurling. So big pressure this year, but like, how would you look back on that defeat against Limerick now? Like a lot of times passed since then. So, I mean, at the time, there was a lot of people saying a lot of negative things about Cork and all the rest, and people saying this, saying that. So what's your take on that now that I suppose a year has passed?
I suppose it's kind of mixed feelings. Like at the time, I wasn't saying disgrace or anything. I was just saying Limerick, look, better team in the day. You could have no complaints whatsoever. Limerick are just in a league of their own. But I wasn't actually at the game. I was watching it on TV. But my parents and I think my sister was at the game as well. And they see the Cork warm-up compared to Limerick, and the size of the Limerick players compared to ours. The difference was so huge. So it was absolutely unbelievable. Like, you look at the size of them Limerick players, Kyle Hayes, Garrod Hagerty, Cian Lynch, they're monsters, literally, compared to our players. And I think that's what Cork probably need to improve on. They need to improve on strength. It's okay just having skill, but they need to improve on strength in their team. And maybe that could be rectified. Like Mark Keane, you've seen, has come back from Australia. He's decided, I think, to play with the hurlers. Maybe he can add that extra spice to the team. He played wing forward in the Canon O'Brien Cup game against UCC. So maybe they'll use him there to deal with the likes of Kyle Hayes for this year's championship game against Limerick. That should be interesting enough. He did well in the junior championship for Ballygiblin, but some people say he might struggle. But yeah, look, mixed feelings. Limerick were boys ahead of us, but there is more to improve on. Like, we need to improve strength and conditioning wise. I think skill wise, we do have the players to potentially win the All-Irelands in the next few years. That's if this Limerick team stop at a halt. But honestly, I just don't see this Limerick team stopping. Really, they're on a gallop at the moment, and they could even win 5 in a row, eclipsing that Kilkenny team, or maybe even eclipsing the Dublin footballers. They're that good of a side. They're a superbly well-drilled side, and John Kiley will not be letting up this year, and there's a lot for Cork to improve on, but I don't think we'll win an All-Ireland in the near future, not because of our players or anything, it's just how good Limerick are.
Yeah, I do think someone will figure Limerick out eventually, and I don't think they'll quite eclipse the 5 in a row, in my opinion. But like what you said there, like the size of them is quite freakish in many ways. They nearly look like a rugby team, when you look at some of the size of the players and I suppose what they can do with the ball as well. Like, and you mentioned there Cork having the skill, and that definitely is a great point, because we've seen the pace of the team in many ways, and we've seen the pace of Jack O'Connor and you'd Shane Kingston when he was playing as well, and you've a lot of young lads that have come through like Alan Connolly and whatnot. So like it was a positive year in many ways for Cork last year, like considering when you look back in the previous year having been knocked out by Tipperary in the qualifiers. So the fact that you did push, go all the way, and yes, Limerick completely steamrolled is in that final, but I think as well you have to remember like that first half performance from Limerick was probably one of the best first half performances potentially ever in an All-Ireland final at all codes. So like still a lot of positives, I'd imagine, to take away from a Cork point of view.
Yeah, there definitely is positives, but I suppose it kind of was overshadowed by the draw in many ways. I'm not taking away from the fact Cork reached the All-Ireland final, but when you look at our journey to the final, we played against Clare, who are arguably the weakest team in Munster, and we only needed a Park Holland save to get out of that game in the Gaelic rounds. Dublin, I think Dublin had COVID issues. Owen O'Donnell was missing, which was a huge loss, so we kind of got lucky there. Kilkenny in the semi-final, let's be honest, like a real good side like a Limerick or Tip on their day or Waterford would have put that Kilkenny team away in normal time. We didn't put them away in normal time because of fiddling around at the back, and that's another thing we need to improve on. We need to, see out games more, and that'll be probably the big issue. Maybe I just think the draw was a bit too kind for us last year compared to the likes of Watford, who went through battle after battle, Tipperary on that side. When you look at the other side of the draw, actually, Limerick, Tip, Watford, Galway. Like, honestly, I think 4 of those sides on their day are better than Cork. That's just my opinion. I just think we aren't quite there yet. I think we do have the talent, but we don't have the strength maybe to contain with those teams, and maybe not the management either. Like, you look at Watford, managed by Liam Cahill, brilliant decision to keep him on, and delighted for Watford that they kept him on. Galway, of course, of Henry Shefflin coming in. That should be very interesting this year. And of course, Limerick of John Kiley. There's still some question marks about Tipperary with Colin Bonner and of course Lucy de Kerry. I know we'll go back to the argument, it's pre-season, but still that was a big loss against a team like Kerry. But yeah, I would say I'd stick to my guns. I think we kind of had an easy draw last year, and that was why we got to the All-Ireland final so easily. And when you look at them 4 teams on the other side, if they're on top form, I think they could be Cork, in my opinion. I might get disagreements in the comments by Cork fans, but that's just my opinion. I just think we're behind those 4 sides at this moment in time.
Yeah, like I think it was a good win against Kilkenny, though. Like, I think Kilkenny are a good team, but you could argue the point as well that maybe they're not quite there just yet, and they probably aren't the same Kilkenny team as maybe 10 years ago or so. Like, but you were mentioning there, like, the young players coming through, and plenty of under-20 success last year. Won 2 under-20 All-Irelands last year, with the fact that you won the 2020 delayed final against Dublin, and then won the 2021 final as well. So, like, for Cork, they are on the rise at the minute. And would you expect many of those under-20 players to come through this year?
I would definitely expect 2 centre-backs, in my opinion. Tommy O'Connell from Middleton looks a very good player. And Kieran Joyce, I'm sure he's only 19, but he's a very good player, very athletic. And he's kind of a player we need at centre-back. Another player, I know he's not under 20, Mark Keane, the guy, obviously, that scored that goal against Kerry in football. He's committed to hurling this year, apparently. And there's rumours he'd be a wing forward. Kind of, I'd say, to deal with the threat of Kyle Hayes for Limerick in the first game in Munster at least. So there is a few new players coming in. There's a few defenders. Obviously, we have a young team from last year. Park Hollins, the goalkeeper, still young. Robert Downey, it'll be interesting to see his second full year at full back. Niall O'Leary looks a very good talented cornerback. So, look, I think we do have the talent. Patrick Power as well. Alan Connolly, Shane Barrett might come into their own as well. Jack O'Connor's still young enough. So, yeah, I still think we have a young team to challenge in the next few years. And Yeah, Conor Lehan, another lad, he's coming back in the team. I know he's about 28, 29, but after his form for Middleton, he's coming back into the team, which is absolutely brilliant for Cork, because the more brilliant forwards we have, the better. Of course, we have Patrick Horgan and Shane Kingston as well. So, and Robbie O'Flynn, who I think is an underrated player, especially the club championship last year for Erin's Own, scoring goal after goal. So I do think we have a good team in each individual position. It's a question of, do we have the strength and do we have the team unity? That's two questions that Kieran Kingston and his background team need to answer for the upcoming season. And it'll be interesting to see. It'd be very interesting to see, because I honestly think Waterford and Limerick are the two best teams in the country. I think we're level par with Tipperary, and then level par Galway. Arguably, I know I watched Off the Ball during the week. Will O'Callaghan actually put them ninth, which I think is completely false. I know they had a bad year last year, but they have King Henry coming in. They still have young players like Brian Concannon there, Connor Whelan, and I know Big Joe is gone, but still, they'll be a threat this year and want to right the wrongs from last year. So I still think it'll be a tough year. Limerick are miles ahead. Waterford are miles ahead in second, in my opinion. They still have Liam Cahill, Austin Gleeson. And then the rest, I think it's up for grabs, up to maybe Dublin and Wexford. So, yeah, it should be a very interesting year. We do have young players coming through, and we have some older players coming back into the team. So it should be very interesting to see how this year pans out in the league, and of course, definitely in the championship.
Yeah, I think having Galway ninth is a bit of a farce, really, in many ways. Like, I know a lot of teams are like, there are a lot of teams probably closing the gap on Galway. There's no doubt about it. Like, you could have argued the case maybe in previous years that teams like Dublin and Clare would struggle against a team like Galway with the quality that they had, and the gap definitely is closing now. Like, we've seen what Dublin done to Galway in pre-season, but it is pre-season, and it was a much changed Galway team compared to the Galway team that we've seen in the championship last year. And yes, they don't have Joe Canning, but they probably have as good as a record, or they've had as good as performances against Limerick in recent years as anyone, really. So I'd still have them in the top 3 or top 4 anyways in the country. You were mentioning there about that 17-year drought for Cork, and with those under 20 players coming through, and with having gotten to a final last year, like, do you think that gap and that potential drought, maybe it won't come to the end this year? And as we said, Limerick are, it's going to be very hard to stop them over the next couple of years. But if anyone was to potentially stop them, with the fact that Cork are very much on an upward trajectory in terms of the players that are coming through, do you think maybe it could be yourselves that could potentially end that drought when it does happen?
It'd be a tight one, but in my opinion, it won't be. In my opinion, the team, if there's any to stop Limerick in the next few years, will be Waterford. I think they look a very good side. They have the manager, Liam Cahill. They still have Austin Gleeson, Jamie Barron, Stephen Bennett, and of course the Ballygunner lads. If they come back into the fray as well, they'll be a very good side, and they'll be hungry. Like, Waterford have gone even longer without all our list, I forget, since 1957. So they're basically the Mayo of hurling, but still, I think Waterford are more likely to win All Ireland than Mayo over the next few years, because there's something about this team that Mayo don't have a bit of heart in the team. So I would say Waterford would be closer to Limerick at the moment. Galway, I think, would be probably third. And then fourth, I think it's between Tip and Cork. It could go either way. A lot of people reading into the Kerry game for Tipperary, but let's not forget, Tip were playing like their third team. So maybe that was a bit of a false scoreline there. And let's not forget, Kerry have developed well in hurling. They're bringing in some Limerick lads, and Kilboy, their success in the intermediate championship, of course. So Kerry hurling is up an upward trajectory. So, and then after that, after Cork and Tipperary, I would say Kilkenny, Wexford, Dublin, and Clare, of course, between them for a few sides. But then again, Clare were within a poke of a ball of beating us last year in the qualifiers. So it just shows you how tight it is below Limerick, of course, that the hurling championship can be. And even thinking about Limerick, there is a bit of positivity for the other teams. The way Tipperary performed in the first half, they blitzed Tipperary. I know it ended up being quite a comfortable win for Limerick in the end, but Tip showed they could go man-to-man on Limerick and challenge them all the way in the first half at least. So maybe there's a bit of positivity there, and considering I'd have Tip around 4th or 5th, most people have them lower, and Tip did that to Limerick last year. Maybe there's a positivity for the likes of Waterford, Cork, possibly Kilkenny and Galway to close the gap even further. But as I've said previously, Limerick just look a beast in every position, not just one. And they could have even got 15 All-Stars last year, let's be honest. I know it might look silly having 15 Limerick players on it, but at the same time, you couldn't argue with it. They were the best team in the country by a mile last year. And even better than maybe even the Kilkenny teams around 08, 09. That's a big shout, I know, but this team is an unbelievable team and it's hard to stop. But if you're looking for a team to stop Limerick, if there is one, I'd go towards Waterford. I don't know what you think yourself, but I think Waterford have the team to do it.
Yeah, I think they're definitely a team that could be there. I wouldn't write Clare off though as well. I actually think Clare, like Tony Kelly, is getting older, but he's still got a lot of good amount of years still left in him. And I do like some of the players they've brought through in the past couple of years. It is just one of them things. Can Clare actually make that step up? And this might sound crazy as well, but I actually don't think Dublin are too far away either. Like I really like the look of Dublin last year, and I think some of the players potentially being added into the panel this year. Look, I think they're a long way off winning the All Ireland in the next 3 to 4 years, but I think after that they could be thereabouts. But in terms of the league, like just looking at the league briefly, I suppose from a Cork point of view, like you're in there in Division 1A, in there with Wexford, Galway, Limerick, Offaly and Clare, so and Galway as well. So how could you see Cork maybe approach the league? Do you think there'd be much rotation there? Could they go strong, or what's the aim or objective for Cork in the league this year?
That's the thing. I don't think there's an aim and objective for the hurlers. There is for football because it's crucial with the Tailteann Cup and all that. But with this hurling league, I think there's one clear candidate for relegation. I'm sorry to any Offaly fans if I'm offended, but Offaly will finish bottom of this division. Then you look at the rest, then it's maybe about silverware. It's a nice trophy to win, but realistically, Cork would want, I would think, Munsters and All-Irelands if they're going to be serious about challenging Limerick in the next few years. Maybe a bit of rotation because Cork didn't take part in the Munster Hurling League this year. I'm not sure what it was. Some people were saying there was only 5 teams allowed and Kerry took that place. Some people were saying they're on holidays. I don't know, but Cork didn't take place in that competition anyway. So maybe I think there'll be a bit of rotation in this division. There's no danger of us going down. So it's all about how much Keir Kingston and the lads want the Alliance League. Like you even look at Limerick last year, they played second string teams, and you look at them in the All-Irelands, blitzed everyone. Waterford didn't put up a strong foot in the league. They were arguably the second best team in the country last year. So look, I think it'd probably be a rotation side, in my opinion, considering we didn't have pre-season. We only had one game in pre-season, a Canon O'Brien Cup game against UCC, and that's within our own county. So that doesn't really say much, to be honest. Like Robert Downey, for example, was playing for UCC. So it wasn't really our starting 15 that we play for a quarterfinal or a Munster Championship game, for example. So I think it will be a rotation team, considering there'll be a lot of players like Padraig Power would want to put their hands up for selection going into the championship. And yeah, I think it'll be a rotated side. I don't think Keir Kingston will be looking too much into the league, considering there's no danger of us going down. That title goes to Offaly. So yeah, I think it'll be a rotation side, to be honest. I think the main aim will be Munster, All-Irelands. And for this campaign, just to test out players, really, it won't be that crucial, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we've seen that with the Hurling League last year, because maybe they should change the format maybe a little bit, where it's the top 2 rather than the team who finishes first, and maybe then you can have league semi-finals or something that maybe there might be less dead rubber games maybe towards the end of the league campaign. But definitely, like what you said there, I could see a lot of rotation from a Cork point of view. What would quantify a success for the Cork hurlers then, do you think, in 2022 overall? Like, is it to get back maybe to another All-Ireland final challenge, come close, or what would you feel? Because like what you said, like they probably did have the easier side of the draw last year and probably avoided some of the big hitters in Galway, Tipperary, Waterford. So what's the expectation this year, and what would be a success for the Cork hurlers in 2022?
It's interesting, like before I came on here, I was looking at Cork's fixture list in the Munster Championship, because I'm not looking too much into the league because I think we'll rotate the team. So I'm looking forward to the Munster Championship. our first game is against Limerick at home and our second game is against Waterford away. That's a really, really tough start for Cork, and the worst start you possibly could have got, because you don't want to play Limerick at Páirc Uí Chaoimh because they're used to the pitch by now after playing a couple of Munster Championship games there. Waterford at Walsh Park would be an absolute nightmare because the Waterford faithful will get behind their supporters, and Waterford will be used to that type of pitch unless Cork play their matches at Páirc Uí Rinn in the league, which could happen. Like Ciara Gibson might be a bit like the footballers with Kerry. We're not going to beat Limerick at the first day out when they're going to be blitzing everybody at this stage. Then the last two games, I think we'll be confident enough to beat Clare. But then it goes down to the last game, and this could be a factor to decide third place. Tipperary in Semple Stadium. Whoever wins gets third place at the qualifiers. Whoever loses is out of the All-Ireland. That's an absolute huge game for us. And pretty fitting this will be the last game in the Munster Championship. Like in Semple Stadium against Tipperary, I think they'll improve game on game. There's a bit of drama with the Tipperary squad though. Like, for example, Bubbles O'Dwyer has been kicked off the squad. I don't know why. What's the issue there? Did he have a temperament issue, or does Colin Bonner think he's too old? I still think he has a lot to offer. So that's a bit of a strange decision in all honesty. But I think with Tip gaining momentum under Colin Bonner, I think they could be a dangerous force yet. They have brought Conor Bowe into the team for the footballers. They brought in a few young players, Owen Connolly at centre back. So they're blooding in some talent this year. It'll be interesting to see what Colin Bonner does. Will he do the same as Liam Sheedy last year? Just stick with the old talent? Or will he go with the young talent? I would think the latter. I think he'll go for the young talent. If he does, that could be a very difficult game for Cork, especially up in Thurles. And like, if we win that, we'll most likely play a quarter-final against, I'm thinking, Leinster finalists, probably Kilkenny. So I think we'll probably beat them, but then we'll go on to play probably Limerick in the semi-finals and lose. So I think the max we'll probably get, in my opinion anyway, would be the All-Ireland semi-finals. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if we go the Munster group, because Tipperary will be as much up for the game as we are.
Yeah, like it's such a, it's so tough in there, like that Munster round robin, because maybe from a neutral point of view, like I love it, like the excitement and all the rest, having all the games, and it definitely is the right way to go about it. But it probably is tough on some of those Munster teams, because if they were to go into the qualifiers and get matched up against a Leinster team, they'd probably progress, the teams who were getting knocked out of Leinster. But at the same time, you could look at it and think, well, at least they're getting more games in Munster anyways, and it is fair because they're playing every team in Munster. Like, you can't really argue the case that they're not, good enough or not better or whatever. So, but ultimately then you're looking at Limerick to win the All-Ireland. Like, there's no stopping Limerick this year.
No, not in my opinion. Like, in previous years, you would have said the football straight away at Dublin, and the hurling would be very close. This year, it's roles reversed. The football's well open. I know it's like Kerry will win the All-Ireland, but still, there could be a bit of frayed with Jack O'Connor. But with this Limerick team, there's no stopping them. They're just an absolute machine, and there's no sign they're going to stop even that first half performance. It took them a while to get going last year. Like, it took them really up to the second half to wake up against Tipperary. But once they woke up, they showed what a savage team they are. All over the pitch, you look at Kyle Hayes, Dermot Burns, and as well as that, the age profile of this team, which is why I think Limerick could go on a 5 in a row, 6 in a row. The age profile, the strength, the manager, it's all there for Limerick. The strength and conditioning, the sponsorship deals with JP McManus. This is going to be Limerick's time. They could win even 5, 6 in a row. This could be a period of Limerick dominance. But I think if there's any team to stop them, it'll be Waterford, in my opinion. Liam Cahill's a good coach. Austin Gleeson, Jamie Barnes still around. So it will be an interesting All-Ireland this year under Limerick, but I just don't see anyone stopping this Limerick team, to be honest. They look just a beast that doesn't look like slowing down anytime soon and doesn't look like dying.
Yeah, like I'd agree with you all right with Limerick winning the All-Ireland from here. I actually think Galway or Tipperary might be the closest. Like, I've seen Limerick play Waterford enough times now in the Munster Championship and the All-Ireland series over the past couple of years, and I just think Limerick have Waterford's number. And it just seems that Waterford can't seem to get their big players like Jamie Barron into those games against Limerick, and they do, Austin Gleeson and whatnot. Like, it's very tough for them to get their big players in those games, but maybe they might have a different game plan this year, and I think maybe they might have to have a different game plan if they want to beat Limerick. And I'm sure for all the teams across the country, they're really looking at some sort of strategy to beat them when that game does come along. But at least they will get to play Waterford, or they will get to play Limerick in that Munster round robin series, which will be another game against Limerick and more game to build. Any surprise teams you think that might maybe cause a shock or two, or cause a surprise maybe en route this year? Like we've seen really over the past couple of years, there's been like Cork were probably a surprise last year, Waterford a surprise the year before. Like in hurling, you do seem to have a lot of teams that do come out of nowhere. So do you think there could be many this year?
Well, according to Will O'Callaghan, Galway. But obviously, like putting Galway ninth was a bit of a travesty, to be honest. And even I respect off the ball and all that, but to put Galway ninth, I mean, was ridiculous. Seriously though, I think Dublin actually. I think they have the ingredients for a good side there. I'm not sure about Wexford. I know they have good players, but there's question marks over Darragh Egan coming in as manager. I didn't know who he was, to be honest, before they appointed him. So that tells you all you need to know. If there was a surprise package, I'd probably go Dublin. But even going further down in the Christie Ring, I think it'll be a battle between Kerry, Antrim and Offaly to go up to the Liam McCarthy next season. And that should be a very interesting battle there, because Kerry obviously beat Tipperary. There's some huge positivity in Kerry hurling at the moment. They've got some Limerick lads in. They've, a bit like Sligo with Pat Spillane, they've used the parent rule brilliantly there. I know Michael Duignan's been ranting about that over the last few weeks. But still, it's a good way to develop a county. There's no complaining over that. And I hope Kerry hurling does well this year. And look at Offaly, Antrim. There'll be a lot of vengeance in Antrim. Like, they might feel hard done by getting relegated after their league exploits last year, just losing that game in particular to Laois. Offaly, they need to get back without a doubt. And Michael Fenley in charge there. There's some very good young players coming through. Offaly rising in both football and hurling could happen. But in the Liam McCarthy, I think Dublin would be the close to dark horse. And I think the Christie Ring will be a very interesting competition between those three sides in particular next year or this year.
Yeah, like it definitely will be interesting. All right, like looking at those three teams. And Dublin, yeah, like definitely this is the most excited I've probably been as a Dublin hurling fan anyway, maybe going back probably maybe 2013, maybe potentially, or maybe 2014, maybe. I know 2014 wasn't a great year, but there was still a lot of excitement at the start of the year considering what happened in 2013. So definitely a lot of excitement there. And I think Clare as well are probably another team that could cause a surprise or two. But again, I'm not too sure what the scenario is with Aidan McCarthy and potentially Tony Kelly's injury as well. So that could be two big blows. But look, we'll wrap this up here anyways. I appreciate your time, Matthew, as always. And yeah, I'll link down your podcast down below for anyone to go and check you out. And yeah, if you could check Matthew's Instagram account out as well, at GAA Statsman. A lot of stats on games, and I'm sure you'll be doing a lot of stats on big championship and football and hurling games this year. So I appreciate you jumping on.
Yeah, all ready to go, Aaron, for this season. Very excited, and thanks for having me on again. Much appreciated.